Hi, I'm Dr. Ben Quist, and we have a special episode for you today on the Form and Fitness channel. We're going to cut into an hour-long presentation that I did on the age-old question of, what should human beings be eating? I guarantee you're going to learn some things in the talk, and I hope you enjoy it. Hopefully you've come to hear a talk on nutrition tonight with a little bit of a bias on carbohydrates. We're going to be talking about that tricky macronutrient, the carbs, tonight. And you're going to be hearing my musings and ramblings about nutrition. One quick disclaimer. I am not a medical doctor. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I'm also not a registered dietitian, so I'm not giving medical advice tonight. I am simply just sharing with you guys my thoughts as somebody who's just interested in nutrition. So I appreciate you guys all coming out tonight to share in the conversation with me. I just want to warn you guys, I will be talking about poop tonight, so if that is something you can't handle, I suggest that you leave the room now, because it's going to happen. We are going to talk about it. Not at length. It's not going to be like 90% of the presentation, but maybe like 2% we will be talking. So just a little warning. Just to give you guys a little bit of a outline for what we're going to be talking about tonight, we have 5 main points. First thing we're going to talk about is just what the state of nutrition is in the United States right now, as far as the mindset goes, and across the world, really. Then we're going to talk about macronutrients in general, because what could be more exciting than macronutrients, right? Then we're going to dive in on carbs. Then we're going to talk about why carbs might be important for you. And then we'll finish with trying to dispel some of the confusion and bring everything back together at the end of the talk. Okay, so those are our 5 objectives tonight as we move along and talk about this stuff. So first and foremost, we are going to talk about the state of nutrition in the United States. Okay? So when we look out and we look at the periodicals and the internet and all of the things that are getting put out there in nutrition, if I had to come up with one word that I felt kind of summed up the overall thought process on nutrition in the United States right now, I think this would be the word I would pick. I would pick chaos. Right now, there has never been so many conflicting viewpoints, so many different things about diet, so many things we shouldn't be eating but then should be eating, and it has created a ton of confusion for people. So it's part of why I'm doing these talks. As someone who's avidly interested in nutrition, I want to just have the conversation with you to try to hopefully deconfuse, is that a word? Deconfuse you all, as far as that goes. And now it is, yeah, right. I like making up words, anti-hunchy. So when I started to get involved in nutrition, I come from a family where my mom, I can remember this as a 4-year-old boy, she would take me on trips to a health food store called The Outpost, and it used to be located in like this kind of weird section of downtown, not downtown, kind of some part in Milwaukee. I remember going down there, it was by the railroad tracks. And we would get like the weird ground up peanut butter before anyone knew trans fats were bad for you and all that kind of stuff. And then I would go to school with my little paper bag lunch with my cardboard bread whole grain sandwich with, the peanut butter and the honey on it, and then some fruit, and then no one would trade with me at all at lunch. And even though that was very traumatic for me, I really began to love nutrition. I really kind of blame my mom for that. She really kind of helped get me going on it, on my road. And in my early 20s, I started to think, gosh, I was a weightlifter and bodybuilder at the time, like how do I eat to get bigger muscles? And then as I got older into my middle age, I start to think about the fact of like, how do I eat not to die? Like I want to live a little bit longer, I want to have a little longer health span. So are there ways to eat that kind of support that? So that's been kind of my passion over the last 7 or 8 years, is looking at a lot of that stuff. But one thing that was interesting to me, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I always have felt that there must be, at the pinnacle of the nutrition mountain, there are these know-it-alls up there, these really, really intelligent people that are up there. They're very smart. They're the people who are going to be giving us advice as the normal human beings down here on Earth about nutrition, and they probably have lab coats that they wear. They may have gone to Ivy League schools, probably, right? Yale, probably gone to the best universities, have multiple degrees. They're probably very smart. If you went into their home and you looked in their library, there'd be a lot of leather-bound books and things of that nature in their house, because they read all the time. They take all the information in because they're going to give it to us, right? They figured it all out. In fact, they have brains that are on average twice as large as our brains, okay? So we have these smaller brains, but these people figuring all these facts out for us have these enormous brains. So they're up there with their giant brains figuring this all out. Then they disseminate the information down to us and they tell us, American population, this is how you should eat. And here's what they first came up with. They gave us the food pyramid, okay? One of the worst pieces of crap advice ever given to the American population. I mean, come on, like, you think that people should eat 6 to 11 servings of cereals and breads a day? Like, what planet are we on? And Cheerios and Captain Crunch count for a serving? You know, it's just, it is bizarre, the information that was then given to the population as to what we should be eating by these giant-brained people. And I think part of the reason for that is that there was a lot of money shifting hands. There was a lot of lobbying going on from the grain industry and the meat industry and the egg people and the milk dairy people had to get involved. And unfortunately, so much jiggering went on that the advice that was then passed down to us, it really wasn't good, you know. And even some of the people that I know really tried to get some good advice out there got shut up and, you know, told to just be quiet and go in the corner, you know. So it's created, again, another layer of confusion because can we even trust these experts with the gigantic brains from the top of the mountain to tell us what to do? And I think many times you can't. And then when you get into the battlefield of nutrition, you know, because it is a battle out there right now, you need to put on your body armor because I feel like right now in American culture, there are all these islands of thought about diet. You got the island of the ketogenic people. But sometimes people from the ketogenic island take a boat over to the whole food plant-based island where it's like the vegans live. And then there's another island way over there where it's the Mediterranean diet. And some people go over to that island, you know, and no one likes anybody on any of the other islands. So if you say anything that contradicts what these contradictory approaches to diet that are out there, you get yelled at and made fun of. You know, so it's a bizarre time in nutrition. So I would encourage you guys that if you are going to follow a nutritional expert, whoever that might be, an MD, a PhD, a dietitian, a health club owner, like whoever you're going to listen to on this kind of thing, look for somebody who is humble, someone that realizes that we don't know everything yet, that there is evolving research happening as we speak, that we're figuring things out. So if you have an expert that tells you the only way to eat is this approach and everybody else is wrong, you might want to look in a different direction. You know, because most of the people that I have followed or I take as thought leaders in the field are very frank about the fact that we're still figuring things out. But there are some things that we've come to general consensus on. So we're going to be talking about some of that tonight. All right, so we got first point done. We've talked about where we are in America. We're going to do a little quiz after each of our 5 sections here. And on our quiz, if you get the answers wrong, you'll be immediately expelled from the room. Okay, so this will keep you paying attention. I don't want anyone sleeping tonight. I don't want any drowsy eyes. So this first one, don't worry, don't get nervous. Don't get revved up on this. This is an opinion question, okay? So take a breath. You can't get this wrong. This is just your opinion. Would you say that the great volume of Americans right now, not what you think, what Americans in general think out there, is the view of carbohydrates favorable, unfavorable, or indifferent? So I hear a lot of unfavorables. Should we just do this by verbal? Okay, I would say 80% of the room said unfavorable. That would kind of be my take on it as well. The carbohydrate is kind of not in a favorable position right now when you look at it compared to the other macronutrients. So we're moving into point 2. We're going to talk about the macronutrients. I'm going to try to make this exciting even though it's not. So we know there's 3 of them, right? There's fat, there's carbohydrate, and there's protein. And they're the building blocks of our food. So let's just talk briefly about each of them and have a frank conversation about what's going on with them. So let's talk about protein first. So everybody loves protein, right? Protein has never been in the hot seat. You know, no one's ever said a bad word about protein. In fact, we sell giant jugs of protein right outside of this door here that you should probably buy and you should plop into your food and you should intake as much protein as possible because you can never get enough of it. You're probably not eating enough of protein, right? So it has a massive favorable opinion amongst the populace. And it's kind of like the golden child of the macronutrients. You know, it's kind of floating above all the other macronutrients in this very special spot. Then we have fat. So fat used to be in the hot seat, right? And those of you who are kind of like past the age of 35 can remember this, that back in the last part of the last century, you should not be eating fat. Don't do it. In fact, we've removed fat from every food we've ever found. We've removed all the fat. It's all gone. Don't eat it. Please stop. If you have that egg, you will die of a heart attack about 60 minutes later, so don't do it. So we all remember that. And then fat, just very slowly at this turn of the century, started to be okay again for many people. Suddenly fat's like in a little bit of a different area. And then we get to the carbohydrate. So the carbohydrate right now, it's like full-on carbophobia. Like, don't eat carbs. You'll immediately become diabetic. They're awful. In fact, we did a little YouTube episode that I did on the importance of carbohydrates because I felt like they were taking such a beating. Everyone was beating up the carbohydrate, and I felt maybe that wasn't warranted. And I selected some comments that I got on the YouTube video because normally we get kind of nice comments and things, and this time we got tons of mean, very negative comments, and I've curated out of that grouping of mean comments to provide some of them for you tonight so you can read them for your enjoyment. So here's the first comment we got. No one needs carbohydrates. Don't eat them. Never. So that was the definitive answer from one of the men commenting on my video. And then here's another one. I think this person was pretty smart because they use a lot of big words. This guy's never heard of ketosis or gluconeogenesis. So wow, okay. And then here's my favorite one. Anytime you talk about carbohydrates, this immediately comes up. If you say anything about carbs maybe being important, and maybe having a place in the diet, you get the person that talks about the tribes, okay? They always mention one tribe that's way up in like the Arctic Circle. They are subsisting 100% on whale blubber. That's all they eat. They have whale blubber for breakfast, they have whale blubber for lunch, and then another big serving of whale blubber for dinner. All they're eating is whale meat and whale blubber, and they're the healthiest population in the world. In fact, the men never lose their hair. They keep their hair all the way till they die. They live on average 20 years longer than the rest of us here in America, and they are a just glowing embodiment of health. And then, of course, we have the other tribe. Typically, that one is located in Africa, and these guys are only eating warthog. They eat it for breakfast, and they have some warthog for lunch, and then warthog for dinner, and they have the most phenomenally strong bones in the world, the best teeth. They can jump off a building, land, they don't break any bones. They live super long as well. They are super healthy, and they have never had a carbohydrate, has never passed their lips. So you got these two very obscure, very small tribes that obviously have massive relevance to the population base in the United States, right? So it's always that funny argument, and I'm sorry to make fun of these, but I just feel like the carbohydrate's been put in a timeout, okay? So the carbs, I think we all agree, carbs are on timeout. It's totally justified. They're in there, they're on timeout. Maybe as we go through the years and we get into the next decade or two, maybe it'll shift. Maybe protein will have its time. Maybe protein will go to timeout. Who knows what they'll do next? In fact, I'm going to predict this here tonight. Within the next 25 years, carbs won't be in timeout. It'll be protein, okay? So they got to pick something new to talk about, right? So I want to just show you how ridiculous this kind of conversation is when we talk about demonizing one macronutrient versus another. With the exception of meat, everything you eat, every food you eat, is a blend of all three of the macronutrients. So for example, beans are usually about 25% protein, 72% carbohydrate, 4% fat. Whole milk is about 21% protein, 30% carbohydrate, 49% fat. So, an orange, even an orange, that should be all carbohydrate, right? An orange is 7% protein. Who knew, right? So I'm just kind of throwing it out there that maybe we shouldn't be so obsessed with a single macronutrient or a combination of macronutrients. Maybe we should start to get a little bit more obsessed with the quality of the real foods that we're eating. Okay, I'm just going to throw that out there because I do feel like that is a point where, it's a little bit of craziness in the thought process right now. Okay, you guys ready for quiz number 2? All right. How many calories are in 1 gram of carbohydrate? Is it 9, 4, 6, or 25? Who thinks it's 9? One person. Who thinks it's 4? Nobody. Who thinks it's 6? One person. Okay, guys, some of you have to participate. So everyone thinks it's 25 out of these 2 people. Okay, great. It's 4, okay? It's 4 calories in a gram of carbohydrate, 4 calories in protein, and then fat is the one that's got the 9 calories per gram. Okay, bad job on that one. You're all out of here. Except for those 2 people. All right, so now we're going to move into a conversation a little bit more on carbohydrate because that's what you're here to hear about a little bit. So what are carbs? And I want to show you guys some pictures because I think the picture says 1,000 words, right? So let's just go through some pictures of carbohydrates. So apple, predominantly carbohydrate, right? Leafy greens, predominantly carbohydrate. Ritz crackers, predominantly carbohydrate. Almonds, lots of carbohydrate. Jolly Ranchers, 100% carbohydrate. Sweet potato has a lot of carbs. Potato chip has a lot of carbs. Blueberries, mostly carbs. Chocolate cake, lots of carbs in chocolate cake. Broccoli, mostly carbs. Table sugar, mostly carbs. All carbs. So I do that little picture display just to kind of illustrate that the category is broad, okay? It's not like it's just these bad foods. So that person that says, you should never eat carbs, no one needs carbs. So are we throwing out broccoli? Are we throwing out blueberries? Are we throwing out all the other things in that massive category of food that is predominantly carbohydrate? I would say that that's ridiculous. You know, in addition to the fact that, like, there are some good protein foods and some protein foods that might be questionable. And there are some foods that are predominantly fat that you probably should avoid and some ones that you might want to incorporate, you know. So again, it's about the quality of food that you're eating, you know, and to demonize carbohydrates is one of the silliest things I've ever heard. And when we go into the next section, we're going to be talking about why carbs are important, you know, which is my favorite part. Okay, so quiz number 3. Now we're getting into the poop stuff, okay, guys? So let's start moving into that category. How many individual bacteria live in your colon? Is it 47? I told you, you got to have a strong stomach to listen to this talk. Is it 47 million? Is it 529 billion? Is it 375,000? Or is it 39 trillion? Okay, is it hundreds of thousands? One person? Is it millions? One person? Is it 2 people? Is it billions? 2 people? Is it trillions? Okay, so guys, you got to raise your hands, right? Okay, so, all right, so you're just saying you're throwing in the hat? Okay, those of you that participated, thank you. So it is trillions. It is trillions of little individual critters living inside of you right now. How freaky is that? Like, they're all down there just doing their thing, reproducing. They're having parties down there. They're eating stuff. They're doing all kinds of stuff down there. So, did you say tapeworm? You said tapeworm. Okay, so why should you guys even care? Why should you care? Why are you here tonight? Why should you care about carbohydrates? And the more I've looked at this and started to kind of connect some dots, the reason that I care and that I think you guys should care is it is about the microbiota, which are the little things living in your microbiome, which is the landscape of your digestive tract. And like you just said, it's predominantly bacteria, but there's also fungus down there. There's parasites. There might be a tapeworm if you're losing weight unusually. And it could be there's other little critters down there as well that are different than even bacteria or the other ones we just talked about. So you could make the statement that we are more non-human than we actually are human, with all the things living inside of us and on us. So just kind of savor that thought for a moment, okay? Yeah, I did a shower. So the research on your microbiome is this emerging field. So if you had looked back 15 years ago and tried to find some research studies on the microbiome, there was like a goose egg. There was very few to zero, okay? No one cared. Everybody thought that bacteria was completely irrelevant that was in your gut. But over the course of the last decade or so, there have been thousands and thousands of studies coming out, and the things that they're finding are absolutely shocking. They are shocking. They're like mind-blowing, and I'm going to discuss some of them with you here. And some of the stuff that is coming out is why you should care about carbohydrates that they're finding out. So we got to lay a little groundwork. So the relationship between the bacteria in our gut, and some of them are bad guys, and some of them are good guys, and some of them you want in certain amounts, and some of them you want a little bit more. So it's not all good guys. But there's this massive symbiotic relationship between the bacteria that is living with you, your little buddies in your gut, and you. If they are not doing well, you are not going to do well. And vice versa. So it's kind of like we live and die by that relationship being strong. And In fact, the research that's coming out is they are involved in all the major areas of health in the human body. They're involved intimately with your immune system. They're involved with your cognition, your gene expression, your metabolism. So all of these areas that kind of bring our health up in general. So thinking about trying to keep that area healthy is one of the biggest levers that you can pull that is going to raise all your boats of good health, okay? So that's why this is important. That's why you should be paying attention. So for instance, when we look at all those things it's helping, one of the things that it does, because they're kind of like the gatekeepers, have you guys ever heard of like leaky gut? So that's caused by dysbiosis or bad things happening in your gut where bad stuff is getting through your gut wall that shouldn't, and it's floating around, toxins are floating around, which creates this low-level inflammation. Most of the individuals think most of the diseases of mankind, modern mankind, like heart disease, diabetes, gout, obesity, are caused by low-level inflammatory levels in your body, and many people are starting to think it's this leaky gut thing that is causing it. So, interesting, right? Your weight and body fat levels will be affected by your gut microbiome. And in fact, as we go into our next comment about poop, they have done poop transplants in a kind of a case study fashion. Well, they'll take poop from a healthy person, not healthy, a thinner person that's at a regular BMI. They will transplant it into somebody who is at a much heavier BMI or who is overweight, and those individuals, strangely enough, will start to lose weight. All other factors being the same, which is like put the research community on, they're like, wow, that's crazy. And they've also done that where they have taken someone who is diabetic or having trouble with their blood sugar regulation and taking poop from a non-diabetic person, and suddenly their blood sugar starts to improve, their blood sugar regulation. So again, really interesting kind of freaky stuff. Like you're just putting the right bacteria in there and then it's causing some solutions to some problems. Very, very interesting. And then obviously our digestion is intimately involved. There are a lot of things that you eat that you're not digesting, they are, okay? So again, very, very important. And here's like the freakiest one. This one is just weird and it freaks me out. So you know how there's nerve endings that go down into your intestinal tract? And I'm always thinking like, well, we're sending signals down there, but apparently it's a two-way street where the bacteria will kind of swim up and they'll get on those nerve endings and they will actually send messages back to you. And the good ones and the bad ones do it. So, sometimes when you have that sweets cravings at night, is that really you? Or is that some bad actors in your gut swimming up and going, Ben, get the Girl Scout cookies out, we're starving down here, Or is it the good guys, kind of going, oh gosh, we need some broccoli, please, send it down the chute, So they're communicating with us, which is absolutely bizarre. So there you go. All right, so hopefully I have gotten through to you guys that your gut health is probably pretty important to your overall health, your weight, and all the things that are typically important to us. And in hearing kind of the foremost GI doctor speak at a symposium, I didn't hear this, I read it. This is the guy that all the other GI doctors are looking to that is like the guy or gal, I don't know if it's a man or a woman. This is what this person said about how to have a healthy gut microbiome and healthy bacteria. The single most important thing you can do to have good gut health is to eat a varied and diverse amount of whole plants, okay? End of story, eat the rainbow, get out of here, guys, okay? We finished the presentation for the day. So that message has been started to be put out, and of course, the really smart people at this supplement company, Balance of Nature. Have you guys ever seen the Balance of Nature commercials? So Balance of Nature got right on the bandwagon immediately, and they've got some of those really smart people from the nutritional mountain with the gigantic brains. They developed a proprietary blend of vegetables and fruits. You don't need to know what it is. They're really smart. You just let them do their job and they'll take care of you. They took these fruits and vegetables, they chopped them up, they milled them, they heated them up, they distilled them down to their very essence where to get all the benefits that we need, you just have these 2 red pills and these 2 green pills you got to take each day. You guys are good, right? End of story. I'm selling some Balance of Nature right outside of the door. Grab your bottles and then go home and you guys are all set, talk done. So the reason that doesn't work, and I hate those kinds of supplements, and every time a friend shows me the supplement of powdered vegetables. Like, stop, just stop doing that. I'm not even gonna talk to you again if you show me one of those supplements, because it pisses me off. And the reason it pisses me off is because one of the things about carbohydrates that's so special, what do carbohydrates have that fat as a category and protein as a category do not have? Did you say fiber? Yes, yep. It's the fiber, okay? So carbs is the only macronutrient group you can get fiber from, okay? So who eats the fiber? You don't eat it, you can't digest it. It feeds all the little guys in your gut, okay? Which may be why eating a varied and diverse plant from plant families helps the microbiome so much, because then you're feeding the right guys. So, okay, now we know, okay, it's not only the rainbow, but the fiber is kind of important out of the rainbow as well. So how many kinds of fiber are there, guys? 2, right? Yeah, we all know that. Insoluble, soluble fiber, 2 types of fiber. You guys are all set. So what I want you to do tonight, go home, pour yourself a glass of wine. I don't care if it's red or white, or if you want beer, that's totally fine too. Take a big old jar of Metamucil, take a big scoop, pop it in your wine, stir it up, blend it in good, and then throw that down there. You got your fiber, your gut health is totally set. Boom, done, end of story, right? We are good. Unfortunately, that doesn't work either, and I watched my brother-in-law and sister-in-law do that. They were kind of working on their gut health, so they took out this big old jug of Metamucil, and they were like, okay, like, don't talk to your family about it, just don't talk about any of this stuff. And of course, Balance of Nature jumped on the bandwagon too. Like, people were cutting them down, so they got fiber and spice, right? So guys, I'm changing my recommendation. Forget about my first recommendation. Take your wine, or I don't care if it's a margarita, or if you're a martini type person tonight, set that up, take out the capsules, put those in your hand, stir in some of that nice fiber and spice stuff, throw that down, throw the capsules down, boom, you are covered, right? We got it. We got the fiber, we got the rainbow, we're all set. We did it. Those smart people at Balance of Nature, they figured it out for us, those huge brain people, we are all set. So the reason that doesn't work, explained by the foremost brainiac GI doctor who's speaking at the symposium, is it is a misnomer. I didn't even really realize this. There are not just 2 types of fiber. And this is one of the main points of this talk. There are as many types of fiber as there are plant types on Earth. So how many plant types are on Earth? Like 1,000 gazillion? I have no idea. Like, it's a lot. It's more than the 1 type of fiber in Metamucil. I'll tell you that much, okay? And just like you might like eating potatoes, and you might like hamburgers, and you might like pizza, we all have different food preferences. All of those different strains of beneficial bacteria in your gut, they all have different food preferences as well. So some of them might be like, hey, we need more of that whole grain because that's what we eat. Or some of them might eat the fiber from a blueberry. So that's where that diversity comes in. And that's why any of those fiber supplements, not that they're completely bad, it's that they're not going to answer the full story for you. Unfortunately, we still have to eat the vegetables and all the other things that have all those varied fiber sources to get the benefits that we were talking about for the gut microbiome. And the rule that I typically look to when I'm telling people, and this is a really easy rule to remember, it's the 30-30 rule, okay? So 30 grams of fiber a day or more is what you should be shooting for, and 30 unique plant types per week. So 30 grams a day, 30 unique plant types per week. So how are you guys feeling about the 30 unique plant types a week? Does that sound daunting? Okay, yeah, usually people are like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot of plant types. So what I would like you guys to do when you leave here tonight, don't buy any Balance of Nature and don't stir any of that stuff into your wine. Take a notebook or a piece of paper and just do a little audit for me. Do like a couple days, or if you want to be extra credit, do a full week, and just start to mark off how many different plant types are you eating. If you get a blueberry, that's 1. If you have a potato, that's 2. And it's not as hard as you think, because many times you can do like a salad bowl and knock out like 15 in one salad, or you can do some type of breakfast bowl and knock out 10 different plant types in one breakfast bowl. So it's not as bad as you think, but thinking about it this way just starts to key in to your mind that the diversity and changing up some of those plant types is probably important. But if at the end of the week you have found that you've only eaten 2 different types of plants, and that came from ketchup and potato chips, you have a problem and you have a lot of room for improvement, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind as you think about the 30-30 rule. Does that make sense? Other things that I've come across that I think are probably pretty relevant to the gut microbiome is if you want a healthy gut microbiome, probably don't take antibiotics unnecessarily. Of course, we all should take them if we need them. But I'll give you an example. I was on a trip for 2 weeks to India about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I went to a travel doctor, and she gave me these pills in this like red bottle, and she's like, these are the nuclear option. She said, these are super powerful antibiotics. If you get into trouble, you just throw these down there, nuke your entire gut, and you are good to go. And so I went to India, and it was with a group of 14 other people on this kind of like trip. And sure enough, like the second week into the trip, about like 90% of our group was sick. They were having, and I won't go into details to not gross you out, but everyone was sick. I was even having a little bit of an issue, and about 3 people on the trip took those pills and nuked their gut. And one of them was actually pretty sick. He probably should have done it, but like 2 of them were just having kind of medium to mild discomfort, and they just threw them down there. So maybe just make sure it's warranted if you take those, because they obviously kill bacteria. So you don't want to kill everything that's good in your gut. Another point is maybe limit or remove artificial sweeteners. There is some indication that some of those can mess with the gut microbiome. Certain medications can have an effect. That's obviously something to discuss with your MD and discuss that with that person if you are worried about any of that. And then don't feed the guys that are the bad actors. And what they like to eat is refined sugar and processed foods. And you're going to hear this keep coming back. Refined sugar, processed foods. Refined sugar, processed foods. So that's what those bad guys eat. That's what they like. So when you have those sugar cravings, they're just asking for some more. And then one you might not know is treated tap water. Sometimes there's some things in there, chlorine, some different stuff that also kills your microbiome. So try to get filtered water, and if you're going to filter it, you can always add minerals back into it afterwards or something. But usually if you're drinking unfiltered tap water, there could possibly be a problem. On the do list for your microbiome, 30 plant types a week, 30 grams of fiber a day, and also I would recommend eating fermented foods. And that's another one of those things where it's like, and I would put Eat the Rainbow in this category as well. It's like ancient wisdom that our parents and forefathers and mothers have passed down to us through the generations. Like everyone knows Eat the Rainbow, right? And eating fermented foods, almost every culture in the world has some form of fermented food. Maybe they did that because they just kind of figured out it was important. So things like kefir, kimchi, kombucha, sauerkraut, yogurt, miso, so we just did like a tour of the world there, right? We had Korea, Japan, like all kinds of different countries, what they eat. Germany with sauerkraut. But maybe incorporating some of that in, because those fermented foods help kind of restock the pool in your gut. What's missing from that list that you think probably would be on there if you're trying to have a healthy microbiome? And it's a pill. It's a supplement. Probiotics, yep. So most of the individuals that I have followed that are actually like doing the gut health research, when I listen to their podcasts and things, and they are asked that question, they usually say it is very questionable whether those do anything to help your gut microbiome. Part of the reason is they usually say they just don't have it figured out yet. They don't know what strains to put in and what amounts and how to do it all, so that's kind of a questionable thing. You may be wasting your money with that, but that's your decision to make on your own. I don't take any probiotics. I just do fermented foods and Eat the Rainbow and don't take Balance of Nature. If I post this video, I'm probably going to have Balance of Nature like suing me, like, oh, that guy, you have this huge defamation. Oh, no one's going to watch the video anyways. Okay, so as we finish out point number 4, you guys have a sheet here, and anybody who happens to watch this video on our YouTube channel, if you want this sheet, I can send it to you if you comment or email us. Let's look at the page that is the Ben Carb Eval system. So first you'll notice that I designed this, okay? I'm not a dietitian. I don't have a nutritional degree. This is just my own system that I use to evaluate a carbohydrate to see if I should be eating it or not. And it's one that you guys could possibly use as well if you want to. So let's evaluate some carbs together, just so we get this fully worked out. There are 3 steps to evaluating a carb. You want a high score on this, okay? So you don't want a low score. High scoring carbs are good. And on our scale, basically, you can see the total score summary. If it's a 10 points or above, you should be eating this food, okay? It is a good carb for you. If it is 6 to 9, maybe eating in moderation. And if it is 5 or below, eat with caution, okay, as far as the carbohydrate goes. So let's do one and just kind of see how it goes. So let's do a Ritz cracker, right? Everybody loves Ritz crackers. They're probably pretty good for you. You know, the cracker section isn't very small in the grocery store, right? I mean, people love crackers. It's an entire aisle, right, is crackers. It's like, oh my gosh. So let's first start with step one. So step one, you're going to figure out, is this carbohydrate processed or unprocessed? And the best description of what a unprocessed carbohydrate looks like that I've ever heard was by Dr. Greger. An unprocessed whole plant food is a plant where nothing bad has been added. So they haven't added crap oils or refined sugar or any of that kind of crappy stuff, weird chemicals, you know, to it. And then nothing good has been taken away. And the thing that they normally take away in all processed foods is the fiber, okay? So then on the opposite spectrum, a red food would be something where they put tons of crap into it and they took everything good away. And then a yellow food would be kind of in the middle, okay? So what do you guys think a Ritz cracker is? Red. Yep, totally red. So it's we're already starting out at -5, okay? So the Ritz cracker has a little bit of a handicap right off the gates. We go to step two. This sounds complicated, but it's really not. What you do is you take the total amount of carbohydrates, which is on any label. Let's see if we can find it there. So you can see there are 10 total carbohydrates in a Ritz cracker. And then you divide that by the amount of fiber in a Ritz cracker, which is 0.5 grams, okay, in the serving of Ritz crackers, okay? So that's incredibly low, right? That's really low. You'd have to eat a lot of servings of Ritz crackers to get that 30 grams a day, right? You'd have to eat like 10 boxes, all right? So, so basically, that is 100% a 10 or above, so that's 0 points, right? So we are still at -5 on that poor Ritz cracker. It's just getting its butt kicked. Okay, and then the final thing is, are there any added sugars in a Ritz cracker? I always make that a whole separate category because I think sugar is an absolute awful, added sugar is an absolute awful thing to intake. And looking at that, there are 2 grams of added sugar. And on that scale, the Ritz cracker again strikes out a goose egg. So a Ritz cracker is a massive fail. It is not a good carbohydrate. It is in the bad category. You should eat it with caution. I would put that in the dessert food category, okay? So whenever you would think of eating chocolate cake, you can also think of eating Ritz crackers, okay? Just kind of put those two together. Okay, so let's move on. We got a bad one. Let's move on to blueberries. We're going to go a little quicker now. So blueberries, anything, obviously, step one, it's green, so it immediately gets 5 points. The total carbs are 14, has 2.5 grams of fiber per serving, has no added sugar. Blueberries come out at 11, okay? So looking at that, they're in that 10 or above, so they're a category of food you can eat. You know, berries are really, really healthy and good for you. And the fact that they come out that way is probably some of the reasons why. So let's do a really bad one, just to kind of show you how bad we can make the score. So let's do a Jolly Rancher. The only time you should ever eat these is if you are under 10 years old and it's Halloween, okay? That's the only time you should ever be eating a Jolly Rancher. They are obviously red, they have no fiber whatsoever, and they have a whopping 18 grams of added sugar per serving. Having them to be they're even worse, they're -10, where the Ritz cracker was a -5. So an even worse food that you could eat, so again, probably try to avoid that. I have gotten the question many times, are there any crackers that I can eat because I like things that are crunchy? So I will show you 2 of them that I found in my local grocery store aisle that I actually eat, and that come out pretty good on my Carb eval system. Again, it's mine, so this isn't like some massive, super smart dietitian created this. This is just my thing that I do. So take it with a grain of salt. But Mary's crackers, you probably have all seen those in the cracker aisle. Maybe you've tried them. No, I know for sure they're at Syndex. Mary's crackers are kind of a yellow, unprocessed. There are a couple good things that are taken away from them, so I give them a yellow, so they get 0 points. They have 3 grams of fiber with 21 net carbs or total carbs, so they get +3 points on point number 2 or step 2. And the final point, they have 0 grams of added sugar, so they get +3, leaving them at a 6. The 6th category is eat in moderation. So there you go. You got a cracker you can eat each day. Now, if you want the superstar cracker, this one, you get like a badge of honor if you eat these. I actually think they taste pretty good. They're called Flackers. I've never seen anything like this. It is like a flaxseed cracker that the flax is congealed together with like water, and there's like maybe 1 or 2 other spices in there. So they're very minimally processed, so I would give them a green. They have an incredible 10 to 9 ratio on total carbs to fiber. So if there are 10 total carbs in a serving of these crackers, nine of them is fiber. So they get a +5 for that, and there's 0 grams of sugar, so a +3, netting them the highest score you can get, which is a 13. Okay? So that is primary. If I'm going to do a vehicle for hummus or something, Ritz cracker, or Flacker crackers, sorry, not Ritz crackers. Flacker crackers are the one, or Mary's crackers are 2 choices you possibly could have in the grocery store if you want that crunch. Okay? Okay, did I get that one to, you guys totally understand it?
I know it's a bad thing.
I would think those would fall somewhere in the Ritz cracker category. But your other homework assignment upon leaving tonight is not to have a giant glass of wine, but to look at the system and maybe evaluate a carb this week that you eat. Pull something out of your pantry. And if it is something that doesn't have a nutritional label, you can Google any food. You know how I got the orange protein thing that I didn't even realize it had protein? I Googled its nutritional label and it will pop right up. Okay, so all that information is at your fingertips on your phone or computer. So yeah, saltines are probably bad.
You know what I got on my counter? Ritz and saltines.
I know, well, that's why you're here, right? We're here to talk about that, and so anyways. It's not the worst one. It's not, you have Jolly Ranchers and, like peanut butter cups on your counter, so that's good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about poop, guys. Quiz number 4. Okay, what percentage of your poop, if we take away water, is bacteria? Is it 5%, 27%, 46%, or over 50% bacteria by weight in your poop if you take away the water? What do you guys think? 5%? Please participate. Okay, we got one person. Okay, 27%? Okay, about a quarter of the room. 46%? Okay, quite a bit. Over 50%? It's over 50%. How freaky is that? And anybody who has increased the fiber in their diet, have you noticed that there's been an uptick in the, have things grown? Have you noticed the size increase? And that's the bizarre thing. When you throw the fiber down there and you feed those little buggers, they go nuts. They start having families and boom, suddenly your poop is doubled in size. And that's part of the reason is because you're putting the fiber in. Okay, we're not going to talk about poop anymore. We're done. We're moving on. All right, so we're moving to the final part of the lecture, which this is just talking about what do we do now? Okay, we've talked about carbohydrates. Maybe you're going to take those Ritz crackers and get rid of them, and you might get some Mary's crackers. Hopefully we're changing some minds here. So here is where it gets really confusing for me, and where I went down a couple rabbit holes over the last decade where I got confused. There are 3 dietary approaches right now that seem to do a really good job maintaining people's weight or helping them to lose weight, and also seem in studies, observational studies and interventional studies, to increase the health and the longevity of the people that do these diets. But here's the kicker. All 3 of these diets are completely different. They are so radically different. So then when you start to think about it, it gets confusing. It's like, okay, well, they're doing the opposite thing and they're doing well to what these people are doing, and there is studies to back this up. So that's where it starts to get really confusing, and I'm going to try to deconfuse it because I think I figured it out. With help of lots of other people that I've read that have looked at this. The 3 different dietary approaches, these are the ones that have there's some research that shows that they work. It's not like just your Uncle Tom at Thanksgiving saying he lost 20 pounds and feels great doing the Atkins diet. Okay, there's actually research. It's the paleo diet and some of the variations. There's some small studies on the paleo diet and we all know people maybe who have done that diet and have been successful. The whole food plant-based diet has quite a bit of interventional and also associative kind of looking at surveys and things where that one has done extremely well. And the Mediterranean diet has some really big studies that have shown that it's a really healthy approach to eating. So let's look at those diets a little more closely. So here's where the confusing part comes in, is that the paleo diet is super heavy on meat, fish, and eggs, tubers, nuts and seeds, low glycemic index berries and fruits, cold-pressed oils. Some versions of it have whole fat dairy, some versions don't, and no grains or beans. So don't eat those. Don't eat them. Shouldn't eat them. Ancestral man was part monkey, and they didn't grow any, they weren't eating grains, they weren't doing anything crazy like that, or beans. Okay, so here's the paleo food pyramid. You can see prominently at the bottom of that pyramid, that clicker is so cool. You can see meat gets like the mainstay in that diet, okay? Moving on, the Mediterranean diet, which a lot of people have tried or are currently on. Lots of whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, olive oil. You should be just like guzzling that down by the gallon. Fresh fruit and veggies, fish is also included in that diet. So here is the food pyramid for that diet, and you can see that whole grains are in there prevalently, vegetables, beans, legumes, fruits. So basically like the exact opposite of the paleo diet, right? So kind of confusing. And then we go to the whole food plant-based diet. So on this diet, veggies, fruit, whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, greens, squash, potato all take center stage. And when we talk about the whole food plant-based diet, that doesn't mean that you're like a total vegan, okay? There are different variations of this diet where some people do intake some meat or some dairy or some yogurt or whatever. It just means that the greatest percentage of your diet is coming from these categories, okay? So it's not as scary as the diet sounds, okay? And when we look at the food pyramid for that diet, we can see front and center vegetables and fruits, and I see a mushroom there, and we got some whole grains up there, we got beans, we got an avocado sitting right there in the middle, greens, leafy greens, so that's that diet. So why do they all work? Why some of them work for some people and not for the other people? Let's try to dissect that a teeny bit. And there was an author that I read where I had like an aha moment where she had said, she looked at what do all of those 3 dietary approaches include? So what are they all eating? And I think that's always like what we're focused on. What are they eating? What are they eating? They're eating meat. Well, they're not eating meat. So we're all focused on that. But then also, let's look at what all 3 of the diets eliminate. What aren't they eating? Because it's 2 different questions, right? And if you look at like what is a commonality, and this is where it gets so confusing, is the only thing that all 3 of those diets have in common is vegetables and maybe tubers, like potatoes, like maybe. So vegetables are the only shared commonality between those 3 approaches. Isn't it interesting that eat the rainbow is the one thing that feeds your gut microbiome? But here's where a lot of information starts to come in, is what did they eliminate? What did they take out of those diets? They took out the added sugar, they took out the refined flour, they took out all the crap industrial processed vegetable oils that are in all of our processed foods. They took out all the preservatives, they took out all of the lab produced anythings, they took out most things that came in a cardboard box, a plastic bag, a fast food wrapper. They're all gone, right? So that's a pretty big list. And again, processed foods and refined sugars, meaning added sugar. Those just keep coming back again and again and again. So is it more important what we don't eat than what we are eating? And I would like to put out to you guys that that's probably the case. So if we wanted to come up with our own diet, let's come up with a new diet tonight. Our new diet is going to be called the non-processed food, no refined sugar, no industrial processed vegetable oil, no preservative, lab produced anything, nothing that came in a fast food wrapper diet. Okay, that's our new diet. We're going to put it out there. That's going to be, why don't we see that diet? Why don't we talk about it that way? I think it's a different way to frame the entire conversation, and I think it's a better way, because when we look at this diet where we eliminate all these different foods or we demonize certain macronutrients, it just becomes a confusing mess, okay? Now, I don't know where you all stand, and I don't know what you're eating at home, and I don't know, some of you may already be eating a Mediterranean diet. Some of you may be vegan. Some of you might be eating a ketogenic diet. I don't know what you're doing at home, but if you want to try to figure out which of these 3 dietary approaches might be the best for you, one way to do that, and this is what I did, is first you ask yourself the question, would you eat that way long term? So if you hate meat, you probably shouldn't try the paleo diet. If it's just something you would never do, or if you hate eating grains and grains don't do well for you, you're have issues with them, don't try a whole food plant-based diet, or the Mediterranean diet might be a little tougher for you, okay? So you got to think of what would you actually eat. And then the second thing that you might want to do is take a look, so when you get your baseline measurements from your doctor every year, they look at your blood lipids, your blood sugar control, your inflammatory markers, your blood pressure, your body weight. But when you go on one of these diets, do it for 3 or 4 months, and then go back and get those things remeasured. And if you find that everything improved, and your weight's dropping, your blood pressure is getting better, that is probably the right approach for you. And weight is a really key indicator, and blood pressure are both great ones to look at, to see. And I'll give you an example. My preferred diet would be the paleo diet. I like eating meat, I love eggs, I like bacon, I like all that stuff. When I went on that dietary approach about 7 or 8 years ago, all of my markers went crazy. I started to become pre-diabetic. I was gaining weight. It was the heaviest I've been in a long time. And yeah, it wasn't good. And my blood lipids weren't great. So it's like, wow, okay, I thought I was doing this super healthy diet, but it really was not doing well for me. I switched to a whole food plant-based diet and everything changed. Everything went way better for me personally. But I just want to make that clear that we are all individuals and these different approaches might affect each of us differently. Okay, so you got to do just a teeny bit of investigative work. But weight is a good way to start. If you eat one of these approaches and you find you're gaining weight on it, it's probably not the right one for you. But the other markers with your doctor, would be a great way to kind of further look at the question. So I have one other thing on the back side. So I get to ask this question a lot. What do I eat? Okay, so this is a variation of the whole food plant-based diet. It just gives you a little ladder of the things that I eat as much as I can, which I will tell you vegetables are front and center. And can I let you guys in on a secret? You don't have to eat grains or refined grains for breakfast, or bacon or eggs. You can have vegetables. You can have vegetables for breakfast, okay? There's no rule that Kellogg set way back, last century that everybody must eat grains, preferably refined and pushed into a little processed flake. You can have vegetables for breakfast, okay? It's not, you don't just have them for dinner. So vegetables serve a big part of my diet, and then you can see the things that I eat at some meals, things I eat once a day or less, and then things that I rarely eat. I still have things with sugar, but that's dessert. I still have, if I go to a nice restaurant with my wife for a dinner and she wants to split a piece of carrot cake, I'm not like a freak show. I'm not going to be like, no, God, no, refined sugar. But, that is a very small component of my diet, okay? So that's just for you guys to take a look at, but that's the solution that I came up with for myself. I'm not saying it's right for you. You all have to kind of figure it out for yourself. I'll do your question in just 1 second. So I want to kind of, as we wrap up here and we'll go into questions, I want to tell you about one of my clients, Greg. I changed his name just for his privacy. About 5 years ago when I switched to this whole food plant-based diet, and I had great results. And we've all known someone that has switched to a different diet, having great results, and then they got to tell everybody. So that was me 5 years ago. I was telling everybody. I convinced relatives to switch to it. People wanted to just slap me to get me to shut up about it. But Greg was one of my clients. He was a retired 72-year-old doctor. He was a urologist, really nice guy. He had worked with me for years, and I convinced him to switch to a whole food plant-based diet. And he was a type 2 diabetic and a medical doctor, and he was really looking at everything well, and it was so bizarre to watch him lose weight effortlessly. And then he started to reduce his metformin in concert with himself being a doctor and his doctor. And he eventually got off his diabetic medication and became non-diabetic. And I've seen example again of people who are not just saying a whole food plant-based diet, but some of these dietary approaches where they have massively changed their health. And in fact, Greg's son is also a doctor who has now become a whole food plant-based eater, and he's influenced hundreds of his patients to do it. So when you make these changes, it's just really neat. If you find one that works, share it with your friends, but stick to the ones that have a little bit of guidance from some of the research. So I'm hoping that tonight we have come from a spot of chaos and we have a little bit kind of cleared some of the smoke, cleared some of the debris that's floating around out there to give you guys a little bit of a better idea or some firepower to go back home and make some changes, make some small things that you might do. You might just start using the Carb eval system to evaluate some of the carbohydrates you eat on a regular basis, especially if they come in a cardboard box, or maybe trying a new dietary approach. So I'm going to open it up to questions now. Thank you guys all for listening and listening to me babble. I love talking about this stuff, so I appreciate you coming out and hour-long talk. Thanks for listening. I hope that you enjoyed it and you learned something. Comment below if you have some thoughts on nutrition you'd like to share. Also, like our channel and subscribe. Thanks for watching.